Welcome to this episode of the NLN podcast, Nursing Edge Unscripted, the surface track with your two hosts, Dr. Rachel Nello and Dr. Michelle Moulton. Unscripted Conversation Surface joins two adventurous nurse educators as we reach beyond the surface to uncover stories from the trenches of education that feature the challenges and vulnerable moments that occur right at the novel edge of innovation. Our conversations will unpack how to transcend these challenges and reveal ways to grow and thrive within the context of the NLN core values. This episode is titled, Dreaming About the Future of Nursing Education Through the Lens of History, where we will dream about the future of nursing education by looking back on the timeless expertise of one of our first nursing leaders, Florence Nightingale. And to help us dream about the future of nursing education, we will invite the wisdom and expertise of a well-respected, honored leader, Dr. Beverly Malone. Dr. Malone is the President and Chief Executive Officer of the National League for Nursing. You may also know Dr. Malone as a healthcare leader, accomplished innovator, and nursing champion. Dr. Malone's leadership experience reaches nurses globally and has advanced the science of nursing education, increased the diversity of nursing and nursing education, and advanced excellence in the care of patients. If I had to sum up Bev in only a handful of words, I would say fierce nurse leader and advocate. Welcome, Bev, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So Dr. Malone, I would like to get us started with our first question. But to begin, I do want to just thank you for your time and joining us. And I'm really excited, as is Michelle, for you to join us. We have been fortunate to be the recipient of many of your talks, messaging throughout either Summit or in the NLN lead experiences we had. And I tried to think of how would I capture my experience from your wisdom and your experience. And the analogy of one of those cell phone battery superchargers came up, because if you think about, and I think about a cell phone, when the battery goes empty, you have to plug it into a wall outlet. It typically takes many hours and overnight. And when I've sat and received your messaging and your wisdom, it's like putting my nurse educator battery into one of those super cell chargers that in 30 minutes you go from E to full. And I walk away with a lot of hope and inspiration and excitement about the future. So I'm very thankful that you're here sharing with our listeners on this podcast some of your wisdom and insight into nursing education, where we've been and where we're going. So thank you.
Of course, Rachel. And I have to say that it's mutually exchangeable. I mean, that when you get fired up, I get fired up. So it's something that's given back to me. It's like nursing care. You know, when we give nursing care, we take care of our patients and usually get a little high off that when we know that we're making a difference in someone's life. So it goes both ways. The patient gets better, but you get better too. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And I think that leads us into this first question we have for you, which is, you know, we're at this 1 year mark of the Year of the Nurse. And I think it's fitting time to take a moment to reflect back on the nursing profession and all we've accomplished. And in doing that, a lot of names and accomplishments sort of boil to the top. And one of those is Florence Nightingale. And although her work and her achievements and contributions were well over 150 years ago, I think so much of her teaching and her work is still relevant today. And so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how we can continue to apply and grow from her work, and especially out of the Notes on Nursing that was back in 1859.
Well, she was quite amazing then, and she's quite amazing now. And I think that shows the test of time, when you're amazing, whenever your time was. And what, 200 years later, you're still amazing? That's quite fantastic. I am looking forward to Nurses Week, when the release of the second Future of Nursing report will come out. It's going to be around the time Florence's birthday, and I think that will be very important. The things that kind of strike me about Florence was her tenacity. I mean, talk about fierce. Ooh, I look mild compared to that firewoman. And I don't think you'd have to plug in very long to get fired up by Florence. she lived in a time when men kind of dominated the world. And although she came from an upper class family, which meant she knew how to leverage, how to use that background. And so I'm not even talking about what she did in nursing right now. I'm talking about the politics of who she was and how she leveraged those politics to make things happen. It's really kind of interesting. Who could have done this except someone who was already into the upper class, someone who had the respect of society, who could have helped nursing move into a profession. And that's what Florence did, was to help us move to a profession. And she did it by understanding that it's about caring for the person. It's not about whatever else you're doing. It's about that relationship between you and that patient, and she did it extremely well.
I especially appreciated that comment about the relationship, because I think a lot of what we tend to do in nursing and in education becomes transactional if we're not careful about really investing in and in nurturing that relationship.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. The other person who preaches relationships is Hildegard Peplau, and she was, the chair of psychiatric nursing, and she was the chair of my department too when I was going to school. So that Florence and that wonderful Peplau mixture there. But what Florence said was at a time when no one else was saying it, when no one else was valuing the life of that soldier. They were fodder, basically. They were in the Crimea and everything was exploding around them. And once you got damaged and wounded, it was almost like, there goes another one. But Florence said, no, we're going to make a difference here. And it has to be, we're going to figure out how we take care of that person. And it's going to be their setting, their environment, their climate. I mean, she was a climate woman before we even understood the value of climate and how valuable the earth, wind, fire, water is. And she understood that, what effect it might have on the care that was being provided and how to work with people. That was probably the beauty of it. How does an upper class person have the audacity and the ability to work with folks who were way below her status? And yet she did, and she did it with humility. She did it with putting them before her. And all of us as nurses, we have to go back to Florence and say, how would Florence do it?
And, that brings me to, how you spoke about how Florence Nightingale appreciated, she was a climate woman. She appreciated the importance and impact of climate on healthcare before anybody else did. And that brings me to Florence Nightingale really as a visionary. And I often think about how oftentimes, in those visions, when you're kind of looking into the future and nobody else is really having these conversations, you end up going against the grain of healthcare and the culture at the time. And I think that the nursing profession is really positioned to continue living out that visionary role that Florence Nightingale really role modeled for us so many years ago. And so I really actually have two questions. One is, what opportunities do you see for nursing to emulate this visionary role, especially in nursing education, research, and practice? And then secondly, and equally as important, what does that change look like?
Well, I'm going to take them one at a time. And let me start with just dreaming. And the ability to dream, you have to have you have to practice at it. It's not something that just comes naturally to you that we dream. I believe you have to sort of almost like put it on your schedule. I am going to have my dreaming session. And I would recommend that to every nurse out there, that we need, because we have the background, we have the understanding of what goes on, not just with one patient, but with the population of patients, and not just with patients, but with people. I mean, we don't want to keep you in a hospital flat on a bed with, no, we want to see you in your homes. We want to see you healthy and help you stay even healthier. That's who we are. So that's a dream all by itself, is the public health nature of nursing. And so for me, the ability to dream is something very special. And someone said to me once, a dream without action is a hallucination. So it's not just about, oh, I've got a dream. Okay, you got a dream. What are you going to do with your dream? How are you going to move it from point A to point B? And I always think of that as that movement as power. If I can move something, an idea, an opportunity from point A to point B, boom, that's a powerful thing. If I didn't do anything else that day, I was powerful for at least 15 minutes and I moved something. And so dreaming is about starting that whole process of having those ideas, having those potentials. And I think that we as nurses are so busy doing sometimes. We are very busy, productive people, that we don't stop and take the time to dream. And I think that when we look back at Florence, we must say she was a master at dreaming. She understood the power of dreaming. She led us down the road to dream a new way to deliver care, a new way to take care of people, an understanding that my health is only as good as your health. And I think the pandemic has taught us that in a very strong, dynamic way. But Florence knew it without, she knew that her health, the health of the nation, was all tied up with one another, that we are all interdependent, and that we as nurses could make that happen. I get so pleased and proud just to be a nurse when I think about what would Florence say, and would Florence say Bev Malone's an okay nurse? And that to me is like pretty powerful, pretty special. And I think all of us want to do that. All of us want to be that nurse that Florence would say, you're okay. And we do that by how we work with our patients. We do that with how the care that we deliver gets delivered. We do that when we understand it's not just my personal relationship with the patient. It's really a collaboration. It's really about my colleagues who work with me. Somewhere she says, it's not just about doing something for herself, it's making sure that it gets done. And that's leadership. And I mean, wow, in her nursing notes, to have that vision that it's not her, the lady with the lamp, having to be there every night, every day. It's just making sure it gets done. And that's what, when she started the nursing profession in that way, that's what she assured us, that on a 24-hour basis, one of us is going to be there. And throughout this country and world, there is a nurse at every corner, at every door that you open. So Florence's dream, making sure it gets done, is actually happening. That's your first answer. Now, give me your second question again.
Absolutely. So, in the face of visionary change, what does that look like when maybe that vision is going against the grain of, quote, how it's always been done?
Well, I always thought that dreams had something to do with rebellion anyway, that dreams were, that if you didn't have a good rebellion in mind, there was no use to dreaming. I mean, it's probably happening, that dreams had something to do with taking out of reality what's there and moving it forward based on some core values. I think people can dream some unnecessarily dangerous things, but when you base it on, for example, like the NLN core values of caring, integrity, diversity, inclusion, and excellence. Wow, I mean, you're ready to do some wonderful things with wonderful people. The definition of excellence for the NLN is co-creating and implementing transformative strategies with daring ingenuity. And I think that's what Florence was about. That's how she did it. And she went against the grain on a regular basis. And that's why I started out by talking about how she managed to leverage her position. Women were not known at that time to be revolutionary. They were not known to be determined as Florence was. They were not even known to be as bright as she was. And so she had a lot to face up with. And I'm sure she had challenges right and left, but that was all part of her dreaming. And that she would make sure it got done, that she would make sure we are the results of that. I mean, we can look at each other and say, and pinch each other and say, we are the results of Florence's dream. We are part of her dream.
You know, when I hear you talking about dreaming and connecting it to core values, it makes me think about making sure we connect it to our why, that we stay centered on our why and our purpose, or else, like you said, dreaming backfires into something totally different. And it also resonates with me how relevant some of this is in today's world when we think about having nurses have a seat at the table. And advanced practice nurse, scope of practice and things like that. I think that there are a lot of parallels and relevance to that.
Well, I agree with you. There was a time in my career where a lovely physician, I mean, he was really a nice guy, and he was going into the board meeting, and he said, Bev, I know you don't go into the board meeting, so is there anything you want me to make sure that I tell them when I get in there? And I said, well, just tell them to save me a seat. And I think that's what every nurse should be about. And I know that not all of us want to go into the boardroom, so it's not every nurse. But I'm talking about if you're in the business of leadership and you're in the business of being like Florence, and Florence is your dream, if you're going to do some dreaming, Florence is part of your dream, then you need a seat at the table, because Florence didn't just sit at the table, she created the table. She built the table, and it's called the nursing profession.
I think that's a great point. So now, as we look back on this past year, I think everything that's happened in the last year has provided nursing, as well as other professions, everyone really, an opportunity to shift our perspective and see challenges as opportunities. And I think of a lot of things over the past year, how nursing has really excelled with that. I think about the prominent role that we've taken in the COVID-19 pandemic. I think about the innovation that has been born out of necessity, both in academia and practice. I think about the highlights of really advocating for health disparities that have really been highlighted against a backdrop of a pandemic. And those are just a few. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on where do we go from here? What are your thoughts on what tangible steps can we take, informed by our past and a vision for the future and dreaming connected to our values? What should we be doing as a nursing profession?
Well, I thought you just said something very important. So I'll pull out from what I heard you just say about health inequities and the issue of structural racism that pervades our country. And the pandemic is one backdrop. I mean, if we were going to have a backdrop like you have when you're in a Zoom conference, Zooming, but there's another backdrop, and that's right now the George Floyd trial that's going on. And so all of the structural racism that's left over from days gone by, days of slavery and days of injustices. So that kind of follows us into the present. And the question that is there about what next for nursing is nursing going to look at our own house? Are we going to clean up our own house? And that while many people think we're perfect, we're not. And that we bring with us our baggage from our growing up, just like everybody else brings their baggage. And we have to work at it. We have to look inside ourselves, and we have to work with our students, with our faculty, with our colleagues. And so my hope is for what's next, that all of us will be looking forward, understanding we've got to do some house cleaning, and some serious house cleaning, and then some building of bridges with one another, and figuring out how do we move forward in hand? How do we move forward with a reality check that none of us are colorblind, and that we all know who we are about that. But we have an opportunity now to have some very courageous conversations with each other, and that nursing is willing to step forward and do that. We will not rely on the Gallup poll. Yes, we're the most trusted profession and have been for 19 years, but we are also human. And we know that with that humanity comes some flaws, and that we want to make sure that the care that we deliver to those patients or people who work with us, that we understand our flaws, we understand how that affects the care that we provide, and we're willing to work on it. We're willing to grow with it. So I think that's just a marvelous time that we are here looking at the future. The other thing is that this Zoom thing, somebody must like it. And the technical ability to do this kind of communication has sort of settled in. It's like having the TV in your living room now. It's okay to have your computer on night and day and your phone with you. And my understanding was that one of my nieces, she's about 7. She now has her own cell phone, and I'm like, huh? But it's that, and her brother, who's 2 years younger, wants his own cell phone. So this is a different time, and we as nurses need to look forward with that. I'm pretty excited about all the care that can be delivered by just a good mobile phone, a good smartphone, and how we communicate with each other, and those calls we have with people all throughout the state and really around the world. And how we're going to do that, not just here in the United States, but globally. And that's happening in some countries where they don't have a lot of tools, but they have their mobile phones and they are out in the bush, but they are giving wonderful care, receiving information and help about how to do that. So I expect us to take the technology and the AI and fly with it, just fly with it. I also expect us to look in the future and understand that there will be another pandemic. There will be another, it's coming. And so to prepare our students and prepare our staffs in a different way than we weren't really prepared for this one. It took us even a long time to believe it was happening. And when we finally understood it really is happening and public health is the way to go, wash your hands, stay socially distanced, wear your mask, and now get your vaccination. Those are just good public health issues. And I think somewhere we set public health aside, and I don't know why, but we have. And public health is probably one of those glorious things that out in the community. And really, if you look at what Florence was doing, she was doing a lot of public health. And so in addition to, being the lady with the lamp walking through the unit, as I would call it, she was out there working with the soldiers, making sure that things were done well there. So I think we can take those kinds of things with us into the future. And I'm excited about having those possibilities. And then there are things I just have not even thought of that we're going to be doing. And I'm so pleased about that, because that means that we're still dreaming. And every nurse should be fully authorized to dream.
The one thing that when I listen, that makes me kind of brings to my attention is the importance of human connection. And whether it is that we have flaws that need to be brought to our attention, we need connection to do that. Or whether it's moving the nursing profession forward and dreaming up ideas that haven't happened yet, we can't dream them up by ourselves. We need connection to do that. And then I also heard you say about, how Zoom and cell phones, and there's so many things in our world right now that can potentially disconnect us. But I think if we stay mindful to stay connected, even using technology, leveraging technology, I think we can keep moving in a forward direction and be prepared for the next thing, whatever that name has.
Right, whatever that name has.
Yeah.
Then I just want to speak about our wonderful advanced practice nurses too, who have stepped up to the game in incredible ways. And everyone's seen it, but I know there are already some groups that are trying to take away the space, the freedom, the flexibility that our advanced practice nurses have. And it's not just about the nurses, it's about the public has gotten used to it now. The public knows what nursing can provide, and in no way should that be taken away from the public. And we need to make sure that there's plenty of room for practice to just expand and grow as needed by the public. We've always been in response to the public need. And I think that that's what Florence was too. She was in response to the public need.
So, Rachel, I'm feeling pretty supercharged by our time.
I think my nurse educator battery got plugged into that supercharger. So thank you, Dr. Malone. This was wonderful. So many things to reflect on, to think about, really to inspire us to achieve as a nursing profession.
And I'm also thinking, Rachel, it might be a good time for our rapid fire questions with Dr. Malone. What do you think?
I agree. How does that sound, Dr. Malone?
It sounds good to me.
Wonderful. All right. So the first question is, if you were to write a memoir, what would you title the book?
I would title it, and I am going to title it, From the Bottom to the Hill. And I grew up in the bottom. That's what the area was called. So I went to the hill.
Beautiful. Thank you. What is on the top of your reading list right now for fun? I know we do a lot of reading.
Well, for fun, I like science fantasy. I do. So David Gimmel's got a book called Winter Warriors, and I saw to read everything he writes. So it's just it would be total fantasy, and I like that. I like to just go in and have that fun.
Great. And what is your favorite quote?
Well, I was thinking about that. I think I like a lot of quotes, obviously, and some of them I've written myself. Maybe that's why I like it. But I like, you knew it was a snake when you picked it up. That one is a favorite of mine. Another favorite of mine is, don't let the world take away your joy. The world didn't give it to you, and the world cannot take it away.
I like that. It kind of brings me back to that connection piece too, that we can share joy and see each other's joy and celebrate each other's joy with each other.
That's right.
If you could have dinner with one person, dead or alive, who would it be?
Well, I'm a pretty religious girl, so, and I figured one of these that I will have break bread with Jesus Christ and God. I think I will do that. So that's already done, so I shouldn't ask for that. So the other person is Malcolm X. I would like to sit down and have a conversation with Malcolm X. I think he was, oh my goodness, a dreamer, and he left so soon before his time. Oh, and one more.
Oh,
I would like to have Mary Seacole, the one she was right across the road, the river from Florence, but she was in a different place. She was a nurse doing all of these wonderful things for the Crimean soldiers also during the Crimean War. And Mary Seacole, she was hard to deal with. She was very determined, dreaming, and doing all those great things.
wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Malone. And I just want to, again, thank you for joining us and sharing your dreaming with us, inspiring us to continue dreaming and moving the nursing profession and nursing education forward. So thank you again very much.
Thank you all.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us with Dr. Malone on this episode. We hope that you'll join us on the next episode of the NLN Nursing Edge Unscripted Surface. Until then, be well.